Hey kids, and welcome to Tier 2 of the Ethiopian History Iceberg. This is a part 2 of my series where I cover various topics in Ethiopian history. So if you want to watch my video about the first tier on this iceberg, you can check it out in the description below. This video will cover all of the topics in Tier 2. I forgot to mention this in the last video, but I won't have enough time to go through each thing in depth. So if there is anything you want me to cover in more depth, because there will be, let me know in the comments and I'll give it its own video. Nothing else for me to really say here. It's not like I got a sponsor or anything. Anyway, in general, the Kibra Nagast is Ethiopia's national epic, kind of like 1001 Nights or the Mahabharata. It details how the Queen of Sheba went to pay Solomon a visit. After some shenanigans, she came back to Ethiopia pregnant with Minilik I, aka the first king of Ethiopia. Minilik went back to meet his dad Solomon, who was so impressed with how cool his kid was, he wanted to give him the Ark of the Covenant as a little gift. Minilik said no, so instead, he took a bunch of Levite priests with him. These priests, miffed at their being taken away from their homes, nipped the Ark. Solomon, realizing what happened, chased after Minilik, and right before he caught him, I guess the Ark had some op powers because it did a room, then shambles, and teleported Minilik and company back to Ethiopia. Minilik then put the Ark in Aksum, where it sits today. There is also a prophecy that talks about Ethiopia being better than Rome, which some people say got fulfilled at Adwa. Dagmawi Minilik, or Minilik II, could be argued for as the GOAT in Ethiopian history, as far as emperors go at least. Without him, I'd be speaking Italian right now. He ruled Ethiopia from 1889 until his death in 1913, and laid the foundations of a modern Ethiopia. He began railways, started the first bank, introduced cars, the telegraph, and modern plumbing. Of course, his greatest achievement is his victory over the Italo-Tards at Adwa. But while he was the king of Shawa, his Hagar Maknat pretty much gave Ethiopia her modern borders. Of course, a lot more could be said about Minilik, but me personally, I've had enough of his glazing. I prefer his granddad a lot better. Wayne Teddy Bear, where do I even begin? Teddy Bear, or Theodore II, or Tewodoros Dagmawi, if you're normal, was the guy who led Ethiopia out of the Zamana Mesafint, which was a period of over 100 years with no central rule. His coronation in 1855 marked the beginning of a united Ethiopia and an established central authority. Of course, he is well known for the British expedition incident, in which he pissed off the Brits by imprisoning some white folk so that they could build him cannons. The Brits then sent an expedition which mocked Teddy Bear, who at this point got deserted by tons of his subordinates, and in the end, he ended up killing himself. One of the things Teddy is most well known for, other than killing himself, was how he went insane near the end of his reign after his white best friend and his wife died. Nowadays, Teddy is also considered one of the GOATs in Ethiopian history and is pretty much the unofficial mascot of the city of Gwender. You know, I feel real bad for Johnny Boy. Johannes IV, or Johannes Arbawi, did everything he could to preserve his empire, but nowadays, people remember him as the Tigrayan guy who betrayed Teddy Bear once. He ruled from Mekele, or Mekele, and spent most of his reign trying to keep what Teddy Bear had established. He was constantly facing threats from the Italians in Eritrea, Egyptoids in Sudan, Mahdists in the west, and niggas like Minilik and Tekleimanot in the south. He ended up dying at the Battle of Galabat in 1889 and had his head trotted off to Omdurman or something, I don't know. Despite all that he'd done, his shenanigans did sorta maybe cause Ethiopia to lose Eritrea, since he prevented Ras Alula Abba Nagga from completely kicking the Italians out of Mareb Melash in order to appease the white folk. These days though, he's become the mascot of Tigray as a whole, since his capital was, in Tigray. So, the Jews, am I right? The Beta Israel are a group of Jews in and around the Gwender area that have been there since at least Aksumite times. No one's really sure on how they got there, but some say that they were immigrants from Yemen, which had a confirmed Jewish population at the time. Maybe they were one of the lost tribes of Dan, or maybe they converted to Judaism out of spite when the Aksumites became Christian. No one is quite sure. For most of their history, they usually just chill in their area, with rebellions against their Christian overlords every once in a while. To survive, many of these Jews did jobs that were considered unsavory by the Christians, mostly things like metalworking and blacksmithing. Their numbers have dwindled tremendously since their peak, as post-70s Israel has began airlifting them out of Ethiopia and back to Israel. Now, considering the things that Beta Israel have to put up within Israel, they might have been better off staying in Ethiopia. I'll let the actual Jews worry about that. For how short the Italian occupation was, it sure had quite the impact culturally and linguistically. I mean, the reason why so many Ethiopian weddings have Italian food featured is because of this 5-year occupation. The occupation, yes occupation, lasted from 1936 until 1942, and kind of sucked if you lived in the cities. Places like Addis got ruled mercilessly by the Italians, with massacres like Acapa Mikhail, where responding to an attempted assassination on his life, Rodolfo Graziani was given a clean slate by Mussolini to kill any Ethiopian he wanted. This led to the death of 20,000 civilians and most of Ethiopia's intellectuals, which probably set back Ethiopia tremendously in possible development. Anyway, this occupation was cut short in 1942 during the East Africa Campaign, where, with some help from the British, Haile Selassie was able to get his country back. One thing I would like to mention before I moved on though was how ineffective this occupation was. On average, Italy was losing 3 billion lira a year trying to keep the population subdued, and Mussolini was only able to settle around 20,000 Italians in Africa Orientale Italiana, compared to his planned 2 million. Of course, most of these Italians got expelled during the communist years, but that's much further down the iceberg. I teased this one a bit earlier, but Ethiopia was one of the first countries to convert to Christianity, first converting in the 4th century AD under King Ezana. As the story goes, a guy named Frumentius and his bro got shipwrecked in Aksum and became slaves to the king. Turns out the king was pretty chill and treated them quite nicely and let them go back to their homeland in Phoenicia, but they stayed because the queen asked them to stay. One day, Frumentius went to Egypt to ask the Pope at the time, Saint Athanasius of Alexandria, to give Ethiopia a bishop. Saint Athanasius then crowned Frumentius as the bishop and sent him back to Ethiopia to continue his missionary work. When Frumentius got back to Ethiopia with the help of local rulers, the majority of the country got converted and Christianity was declared as the state religion. And Naho, that was tier 2 of the Ethiopian history iceberg. Some of the topics in there were just more in-depth versions of the things in tier 1. Anyway, I'm not sure when tier 3 will come out, since by the time I start drawing the pictures for them, September will hit, and I'll have to start doing my university applications. So, tagasuli. Also, this will be the last time you guys can help edit the iceberg, as after this, I will be locking everything in place. So please, if you have any ideas that you think are good, head over to the Twitter link in the description and send them there. Teretin melisu, afe bedabwa abisu.